This video here today is going to be all about twin stick setups. Check it out. When Toyota made these guys and your transfer case in your guys' rigs, the top shifting transfer case, which is one of the most popular ones there, especially if you have dual cases, you have to have a top shifting case. So we'll show you the shifting rails in a second that I'll be talking about. But what they did was they included a single stick here in order to shift from two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive. They got you into four high, and then you kind of had a free range back and forth. Then you shifted, went over and down to shift into four low. So what this does, you can see here, it has a lever on the bottom, and as you shift it around, it moves this guy around on the bottom here. And that fork on the bottom, that little pin there, that shaft, is what's going to move your shifting forks and your shifting rail around inside your rig and inside your transfer case. What Toyota did was they made it so that you could not do two-wheel drive low gear. You could not engage the reduction box, and we'll show you the reduction box here in a second. But they made it so you could not go into four-wheel low, as the spacer comes off, without being in four-wheel drive. So you couldn't kick in the reduction box and go into too low, essentially. So what somebody found out how to do was they came up with twin sticks. So what twin sticks do is you have one lever that controls your four-wheel drive and your two-wheel drive. You have another lever that covers and controls the gear reduction on there. So you can kick in the gear reduction separately of your four-wheel drive and keep it in two-wheel drive. So what this does here on the bottom, you can see there's two little sticks there that these levers operate. And these two little shafts are going to operate your shifting rails independently of each other once a modification is done, which we're going to show you how to do in a sec. So just explaining, that's kind of the emphasis and what's going on behind here. Now we'll show you the internals of the T case so you guys get an understanding of how this is actually working. Alright, so here we have your Toyota transfer case. And this is actually, when you talk about transfer cases, it's really two sections to a transfer case. There is your transfer part here. So you have your input shaft, your rear output, and your front output. So this transfer part here either has a chain or a gear driven in the between your rear output and your front output. And this is what's the transfer part of your transfer case. This other box, the front part here, from this guy forwards, is essentially your gear reduction, and that's how you get down into your four low. All of your low gear internals are in this box here. And this box here is essentially what gets duplicated in order to create your dual reduction cases, your dual case Toyota systems. So if you look through the top, which this is a top shifting transfer case, we've got two rails in here. This is your two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive rail. This one here is your gear reduction rail that will, in this case, this has a 4.7. It'll lock us into the 4.7. But this one does not have the twin stick mod done to it yet. So we can show you guys, if we do this right now, we are in four-wheel drive. So if we go and lock in the shifter there, we're now in two-wheel drive. See, the front output's not spinning, the rear output is spinning. So we're in two-wheel drive right now. We can put that back into four. There we go. Now we're in four-wheel drive high. Now if we move this guy back, that's neutral. There's the gear reduction, the 4.7 is in. Now we have a lot more turns here on the input shaft to get the output shafts to turn, so they turn a lot slower. You have a 4.7 gear reduction in there. But what's interesting from here, inside this tunnel is a ball detent and a pin, and that pin locks these shifting rails together. They're captive to each other. So right now, with that pin in there locking these together, we cannot stay with our gear reduction locked in and go back into two-wheel drive. That pin locks us from being able to do that. So we can't move this shifter rail back into two-wheel drive. So that's what the twin stick does. The twin stick will allow us to, you can see inside here, this space, the gap in between the shifter rails here, our twin stick is going to fit right into that, right there. And that's going to then allow us, once that pin is removed in here, to shift our rails independently of each other. So it doesn't matter whether we're in 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive, we can use 4 high and 4 low. Alright, so step 1 is we need to remove the ball detent so that we can move the shift fork shaft on your high-low, your gear reduction shift rail. So what we need to do is we need to open up this tunnel here. This bolt, this is our detent bolt on the driver's side of the transfer case. It goes all the way through. There's a detent ball on the passenger side and one for the driver's side for that the shift fork assembly and the shaft and everything. So we actually, what you need to get these off is a 6mm hex. And ours was all gunked up here and really hard to get off, and we ended up stripping it when we were trying to go through before. So we highly recommend, check out, we're going to have a video here very shortly on these Gearwrench bolt biters. And what they do is they have teeth in here that fits right over this bolt, and you kind of hammer it in nice and gently so it goes in nice and flush, and it bites into the bolt of this head. This is a completely circular head, and you can see the grooves that it puts in there and bites, and was able to break this bolt loose and get it open even with a stripped hex in there. What we're going to do is be very careful when you're pulling this bolt out. There's a spring and a little ball, almost like a little ball bearing inside. So what I want to do is make sure that doesn't come out just yet. Let's see if we can coax it out. So there's our spring and our ball. So be very careful when pulling this out. You do not want to lose this tiny ass little ball or the spring. Magnets will most of the time get it out, but if you don't, find something simple and narrow to coax it out. And so once you have that ball detent out, you can move on to step number 2. Our next goal is we need to separate the shifter fork, which is this bigger metal piece, from the shaft that's underneath it. So this big metal piece from the shaft underneath it. And what's holding that in is this tiny little pin right in here. You can use a punch if you have one small enough. We are using an Allen head 4, it looks like. We got it started with a regular punch just to get it in a little bit. And then we're going to use it the rest of the way with this Allen head. The big thing you want to make sure you do is you do not want to lose this pin. There's been reports that if you do lose it and it goes down into your case, it will come out as long as you don't turn any of the gears and you kind of turn the case upside down and shake it around. But we're going to see if we can do it without losing it using our handy dandy magnet. So we're going to get the magnet down in there, and hopefully the magnet will catch it on its way out of the shifter fork and shaft. I think we missed it. We'll find out here. Missed it. Alright, so, but now that that is disconnected, we should be able to pull this shaft forward, but let's get that pin out before we accidentally turn any gears. Heard it. There it is, I heard it come out. That's our pin. So step number 3 is we need to pull the shifter fork shaft forward so that the pin that's connecting these two the shifters together and holding them captive to each other, we can then roll it out of the detent bolt here. So what you need to do is make sure that your 4-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive shift fork is in the forward position, and then move our 2-low, 2-high shaft forward. So once that is moved forward, we can kind of see it out of the way in there. You don't need to necessarily pull it all the way out. Just get it enough out of the way so it's out of the way. And then try and hold that out of the way. And tilting this way should drop our pin out. There it is. So that pin there is what holds the shifter forks together. Once this pin is removed, we just assemble everything back in the reverse order that we took it apart. Alright, so once you have your ball detent bolt back in, You can check your shifters and make sure that they all shift independently of each other. So that's in four-wheel drive right now, 4 high. Now we're in 4 neutral, 4 low, and 2 low. So now we have 2-wheel drive low in this transfer case. So that's your twin stick modification. Really cool upgrade you can do if you ever have your transfer case out of your rig. Very easy to do. Bench time in total takes about 10 minutes, maybe 15, as if you don't have any issues. And then one of the big reasons why people like to do this is if you don't have a selectable locker in the front of your rig, and say you have a Detroit or some kind of automatic, like a lunchbox locker, this is a really nice way to make a turn on the trail without having to hop out and unlock one of your hubs. So that as you're making the turn, your wheels, you're not having to deal with the powertrain locking your locker in your front. You can just go into 2-wheel drive real quick from your cab, and all of a sudden your front is disconnected, and you can make the turn on the trail. Very nice and easy, very quick. It's also a lot of fun to play around with. So I've got ARBs in my rig, so I'm going to be using this to play around and just see how far I can go in 2-wheel drive from here on out. So really fun, really easy upgrade. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something here today. Hammer down on that subscribe button over here, and as always, keep crawling.